Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Intentionally, Duan Ling Tian couldn't refrain from laughing when he heard Wu Yongqian's hysterical shout. You said I intentionally caused the death of Peak Master Wu Dao. Exactly, it's you who caused the death of my foster father. Wu Yongqian's eyes were crimson red and suffused with bloodthirsty killing intent that was waiting for a chance to swallow Duan Ling Tian up. Duan Ling Tian glanced at Wu Yongqian as if he was glancing at an idiot, then looked at Ling Hu Jin Hong and said, "Sect leader, the characteristics of the spirit fruit that I described before Peak Master Wu Dao is indeed exactly similar to the spirit fruit that I consumed. As for the spirit fruit that Peak Master Wu Dao found, based on my guess, it ought to be a spirit fruit with similar characteristics as the spirit fruit I consumed. But I'm extremely curious. Even I know how to use a silver needle to first inspect if the spirit fruit is venomous before daring to consume it. Could it be that Peak Master Wu Dao didn't inspect the spirit fruit he obtained and directly consumed it?" Duan Ling Tian's tone was filled with bewilderment. Peak Master Wu Dao did indeed inspect that spirit fruit. Right at this moment, a gray-haired old man walked out from amongst the 7-star sword sect higher-ups. The old man had a kind countenance, and he lightly smiled and nodded to Duan Ling Tian before saying, "Peak Master Wu Dao used a silver needle to inspect the spirit fruit he obtained, but didn't find any toxicity in it. Later on, he still wasn't at ease, so he looked for me and a few other alchemist elders to assist him." When he spoke up to here, the old man stopped briefly before continuing. "But according to our inspection, that spirit fruit indeed contained no toxicity. Now it would seem that the toxicity of that spirit fruit is concealed extremely well, and it completely can't be discovered via inspection. In the entire lifetime of Guanzhong, it's still the first time that I knew that such a spirit fruit existed in the world." As he finished speaking, the old man sighed. Guanzhong. Duan Ling Tian's eyes squinted. According to his knowledge, the only grade 6 alchemist in the 7-star sword sect was called Guanzhong. He was also the alchemist elder that controlled the 7-star sword sect's alchemy hall. Hiss, 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 hiss. Waves of sounds of exhaling cold air rose and fell in the surroundings, and it caused the atmosphere at the scene to become slightly oppressed. Even Elder Guanzhong was unable to discover the toxicity of that spirit fruit. That Migres Peak's master's luck is really. Looks like even if we obtain some spirit fruit in the future, we can't consume it directly. It's best to first dig out a small piece and give it to a fierce beast to consume, and if the fierce beast doesn't die, then we can consume it. If that Peak Master Wu Dao knew to use this method to test for poison, then it wouldn't have come to the extent of him being poisoned to death. Perhaps, even Peak Master Wu Dao himself never imagined that spirit fruit would be toxic, and its toxicity was actually unable to be discovered by normal methods. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples couldn't help but sigh with emotion, and they all felt that Wu Dao had died unjustly and died in grievance. Duan Ling Tian, you surely recognize that type of spirit fruit, so you intentionally made my foster father look for it, right? Wu Yongqian stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian as he questioned with a fierce voice. "Idiot." Duan Ling Tian glanced coldly at Wu Yongqian and said with a calm tone, "Didn't you hear Elder Guanzhong? Even he has never seen or heard of such a spirit fruit in his life. Could it be that you think my knowledge even surpasses Elder Guanzhong? Moreover, according to my knowledge, many spirit fruits have similar characteristics, but their medicinal effects are completely different." Duan Ling Tian looked at Guanzhong and slowly asked, "Elder Guanzhong, is this so?" Guanzhong nodded. "It is indeed so. There are countless types of spirit fruits in Cloud Continent, but their medicinal effect are all completely different. Just the ones I have knowledge of, there are quite a few types of spirit fruits that have similar characteristics with other spirit fruits, and the fake can practically pass off for the genuine." As soon as Guanzhong finished speaking, it caused a commotion as expected. Looks like that Peak Master Wu Dao ought to have found a spirit fruit with similar characteristics. But, although the spirit fruit he found has the same characteristics as the spirit fruit Duan Ling Tian consumed, its medicinal effect was the polar opposite. Exactly, the spirit fruit Duan Ling Tian consumed gave him an extremely great benefit that is admirable. But the spirit fruit Peak Master Wu Dao consumed was instead a type of spirit fruit that contained a toxicity that even Elder Guanzhong was unable to detect. This type of spirit fruit is unheard of. The toxicity of this type of spirit fruit can probably only be detected by making a human or fierce beast test it for poison. But when a person ordinarily obtains a spirit fruit, who would share it with another person or beast? Peak Master Wu Dao will become the Migres Peak's master that had suffered the most aggrieved death in the history of our seven-star sword sect. The whispered discussion of these seven-star sword sect disciples entered Duan Ling Tian's ears, and the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth couldn't help but twitch. That Wu Dao was indeed misfortunate and died an aggrieved death, as he was even able to encounter a soul-severe fruit. Even now, this fact was something that Duan Ling Tian still felt difficult to believe, and he felt as if he was dreaming. When he casually fabricated the soul-severe fruit as the fruit that caused his origin energy to undergo an unusual change, it was only for the sake of brushing Wu Dao off. He never expected that Wu Dao would actually head to the primeval forest to look for the soul-severe fruit. Most importantly, he never expected that Wu Dao would actually find the soul-severe fruit. Perhaps, at the moment Wu Dao found the soul-severe fruit, his destiny had been determined. Sect leader, you already know of the sequence of events. If Peak Master Wu Dao really died because of the venomous fruit, then it can only be said to be misfortune. Even I never expected that the primeval forest contained another venomous fruit that had similar characteristics to the spirit fruit that I consumed. Moreover, it was found by Peak Master Wu Dao. Duan Ling Tian looked at Linghu Jinhong as he slowly said. Linghu Jinhong raised his hand, and his origin energy roiled. Then it enveloped downwards to sweep away the grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water. After a short moment, this grade 6 spirit sword that was once Wu Dao's had now entered into Linghu Jinhong's hands. Migres Peak's master, Wu Dao, mistakenly consumed a venomous fruit and died, and it had nothing to do with anyone else. The grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water, will be temporarily under my custody and will be kept for the next Peak Master of Migres Peak. As Linghu Jinhong spoke up to hear, his eyes squinted as he suddenly looked at Wu Yongqian, who was just about to speak, and his fierce gaze caused Wu Yongqian to shudder, then tightly shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. Disperse. Linghu Jinhong's voice spread out, announcing the end of today's farce. In the next moment, Linghu Jinhong's figure gradually became transparent in the eyes of all the seven-star sword sect disciples. Then it transformed into an image before vanishing without a trace. Duan Ling Tian, come to Dubhe Peak in 3 days. At the same time, a gentle voice transmission entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian was able to discern that this was precisely the voice of Linghu Jinhong. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. After Linghu Jinhong left, Wu Yongqian let out a wave of roars before carrying Wu Dao's corpse on his shoulder and dashing down Dubhe Peak. And everywhere he passed, all the seven-star sword sect disciples moved away. I originally thought Wu Yongqian had some evidence that was hard as iron and would be able to prove that Duan Ling Tian caused the death of Peak Master Wu Dao. I never expected that in the end, all of this would be a farce. However, we finally know the secret behind Duan Ling Tian's ability to defeat stronger opponents. Not only is Duan Ling Tian's natural talent in the martial Dao formidable, his luck is extremely good as well, truly a cause for envy. Under the wave of bustling discussion, the seven-star sword sect disciples gradually dispersed. Hu Shuifeng coldly glanced at Duan Ling Tian, then gritted his teeth as he left with an unwilling expression. High in the sky, the group of seven-star sword sect higher-ups gradually dispersed as well. Duan Ling Tian, I'll obtain the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll sooner or later. Zhao Lin took a deep breath before controlling the air and flying off into the distance. The peak of Dubhe Peak that was bustling just a moment ago had become silent, and only some scattered inner court disciples remained nearby the trade hall and Duan Ling Tian's group. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures flashed down from the sky. The Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan, and the Alcade Peak's master, Qin Xiang. right when they descended by the side of Duan Ling Tian's group. Whoosh! Behind the clouds and mist far away from the peak of Dubhe Peak, an ear-piercing sound of the howling of wind sounded out, and the howling sounds grew closer and closer. Qin Xiang's beautiful brows slightly frowned as she squinted to look at the source of the sound and muttered, "It's a demon beast." For a moment, Duan Ling Tian, Zheng Fan, and the others all glanced over. High in sky in the distance, the clouds and mist roiled as an incomparably fast black silhouettes flashed through the clouds and mist, and everywhere it passed, it pulled out a long stream of air, and its imposing manner shot into the sky like a rainbow. After a short moment, the black silhouette had come close to the peak of Dubhe Peak. So long as it passed through a few layers of clouds and mist, it would appear before the eyes of everyone. First-level void prying stage demon beast. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tian's acute spiritual force vaguely discerned the cultivation of the black silhouette. Not right. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force swayed, and his face went serious. The demon beast is carrying a person. It seems to be a 7th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Whoosh! Finally, an enormous black silhouette passed through the clouds and mist before the eyes of everyone, and emerged to float high in the air. What's that? It seems to be a demon beast. What demon beast is so audacious to actually dare enter our 7-star sword sect? At the peak of Dubhe Peak, the inner court disciples that were nearby the trade hall had clambered over, and they raised their heads to look at the enormous black silhouette in the sky. Presently, Duan Ling Tian's gaze had descended onto the black silhouette as well. This was a bird-type demon beast, seeming like an eagle but not an eagle. Its entire body was covered in shiny black feathers. When its wings unfolded, they were like clouds that hung in sky. The feathers at the apex of its wings were even sharp like knives, and under the scarce rays of sunlight, it flickered with a frightful sheen, causing chills to run down one's spine. Dark Rock. In next to no time, some inner court disciples exclaimed in shock. Dark Rock. When Duan Ling Tian heard this, he started swiftly searching through the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. After a short moment, he obtained the information he wanted. The Dark Rock was a void-prying stage demon beast, and when it matured to the limit, its strength would be comparable to a 3rd-level void-prying stage martial artist. The Dark Rock was the result of the union between a rock-type demon beast and eagle-type demon beast. The Dark Rock possesses the speed of a rock-type demon beast and the offensive strength of an eagle-type demon beast. It's an extremely terrifying demon beast, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. At this moment, what he was most curious of was the identity of the person who sat atop the Dark Rock. Whoosh! Suddenly, the Dark Rock descended from the air, and the figure that sat cross-legged atop the Dark Rock and had a zither on his lap entered into Duan Ling Tian's vision as well. Suddenly, the person extending his hand to stroke the zither, and the sound of the zither vibrated out, spreading out in the surroundings. A sound of a zither suddenly resounded out. It was like a scene of lofty mountains and flowing water, causing one to be refreshed in spirit. Duan Ling Tian glanced over. He saw the Dark Rock had its wings open wide, and its back was like flat ground. A young man in white robes inlaid with silver sat there cross-legged, and was plucking his zither in concentration. Every time his hand descended, a beautiful tone would arise. It was like a clear sound that rose up an empty gorge and ceaselessly curled up to linger in the air. The young man was around the age of 26 or 27, with a graceful bearing and extraordinary disposition. 7th-level nascent soul stage at the age of 26 or 27. When Duan Ling Tian saw the young man's appearance clearly, his heart shook. After all, even the most extraordinary that he knew of amongst the inner court disciple in the 7-star sword sect's younger generation, Zheng Song, was already 28 this year and was only at the 3rd level of the nascent soul stage. This young man was younger than Zheng Song, but his strength far surpassed Zheng Song. Who the heck was he? Zither young master. Suddenly, an exclaim of surprise sounded out. It was Zheng Song who stood nearby Duan Ling Tian that spoke out when he saw the white-robed young man. Zither young master? one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Duan Ling Tian was stunned. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian heard the wave of surprised exclamations coming from nearby. He's the Zither Young Master? Zither Young Master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and is ranked 3rd. Supposedly, this Zither Young Master already broke through to the 7th level of the nascent soul stage a few months ago. He seems to be only 26. A 26 years old 7th level nascent soul stage martial artist. It's simply monstrous. In terms of natural talent in the martial Dao within our 7-star sword sect, I'm afraid only Duan Ling Tian is able to compare to him. Exactly, with Duan Ling Tian's natural talent, so long as he'd able to maintain his pace, the stepping into the 9th level of the nascent soul stage at the age of 26 wouldn't be impossible. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples discussed animatedly. Right at this moment, the Zither Young Master that sat atop the back of the dark rock and plucked the Zither had obviously heard the discussion of the 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. His eyes squinted and the movements of his hands slowed down. The sounds of the Zither rotated and resounded throughout the peak of Dubhe Peak before gradually coming to an end. Whoosh! Zither Young Master's figure moved out the float down. Then his gaze descended onto Qin Xiang and Zheng Fan. Zishang greets the 2 peak masters. Obviously, the Zither Young Master, Zishang, recognized the peak master of Mizar Peak and Alcade Peak. Zither Young Master. Zheng Fan lightly smiled. Even he didn't dare neglect this outstanding young master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's younger generation. Whereas Qin Xiang only nodded indifferently. A strand of cold light unnoticeably flashed within Zishang's eyes when faced with Qin Xiang's casual greeting. But even then, it was still caught by Duan Ling Tian. Vigilance arose in Duan Ling Tian's heart. This Zither Young Master of the 5 great young masters was absolutely not a good person. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian frowned when he noticed the gaze of Zither Young Master. Presently, Zither Young Master's burning gaze had descended onto Ku'er. Ku'er, we meet again. Zither Young Master lightly smiled to Ku'er in an extremely refined and courteous manner. At this moment, it seemed as if only Ku'er remained in his world. Ku'er obviously wasn't so interested with this Zither Young Master, and she replied indifferently. This is. In next to no time, Zither Young Master's gaze left Ku'er reluctantly and descended onto Li Fei, who stood by Duan Ling Tian's side, and his eyes revealed an expression of shock from beauty. In the end, his gaze finally descended onto Duan Ling Tian. So long as it was a normal man, then the man would surely be jealous towards this young man that stood by the side of 2 drop-dead, gorgeous young women. Duan Ling Tian noticed that when this Zither Young Master looked at him, traces of warning were mixed deep within Zither Young Master's gaze, as if he was warning Duan Ling Tian of something. Peak Master Qin Xiang. Suddenly, Zither Young Master looked at the peak master of Alcade Peak, Qin Xiang, and slightly bowed. I came here this time mainly because of wanting to bring up a proposal for marriage. A proposal for marriage? As soon as Zither Young Master finished speaking, everyone present was astounded. Everyone still hadn't recovered from their shock when the Zither Young Master continued. The other time, when Peak Master Qin Xiang passed by the Imperial City, you once stayed in my Z clan. Since that time, I've fallen in love with your disciple. I lately heard that Peak Master Qin Xiang has returned to the 7-star sword sect with your disciple, so Zishang rushed here impatiently, hoping that Peak Master Qin Xiang can fulfill my desire and betroth your disciple to me. At the moment Zither Young Master's words were spoken out, Qin Xian's beautiful brows lifted. The faces of Duan Ling Tian and the people by his side who knew of his relationship with Ku'er went grim, and Duan Ling Tian's gaze went slightly cold. Earlier, he'd noticed that the gaze Zither Young Master shot at Ku'er was abnormal, but he never expected that the reason Zither Young Master had come to the 7-star sword sect this time was actually to look for Peak Master Qin Xiang and bring up a proposal for marriage. He actually wanted to marry Ku'er. I hope Peak Master can fulfill my wish. Zither Young Master looked at Qin Xiang and said a step further. If Peak Master Qin Xiang is willing to fulfill my wish, then Zishang is willing to request my master bestow a grade 5 spirit sword as the betrothal gift. What Zither young master said was like a stone that gave rise to 1,000 ripples. It caused the crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples to be dumbstruck. Grade 5 spirit sword. Even our 7-star sword sect seems to only have one grade 5 spirit sword. This Zither young master proclaimed that he would ask his master to bestow a grade 5 spirit sword. Which great figure is his master? I heard a long time ago that the Zither young master had taken an expert from outside the imperial kingdom as his master when he was younger. Now it would seem that all this was true. Grade 5 spirit sword. My God, what extravagance! The 7-star sword sect inner court disciple went into an uproar as they were all shocked. To them, a grade 5 spirit sword was an existence that was difficult to reach in their entire lifetime. Zither young master. Right at this moment, a delicate shout echoed out. It was Ku'er who stood by Duan Ling Tian's side. She stretched out her hand to take Duan Ling Tian's arm, then nestled up against Duan Ling Tian, and her beautiful eyes condensed into cold light as she looked at Zither young master and said indifferently, Zither young master, thank you for the great kindness. But unfortunately, Ku'er's heart already belongs to someone. Ku'er's heart already belongs to someone. Duan Ling Tian's stiff face bloomed into a brilliant smile, and he twisted his hand to take hold of Ku'er's fine and slim hand. Whoosh! Instantly, Zither young master's face went grim, and the white robe on his body fluttered without wind. He looked at Qin Xiang, Peak Master Qin Xiang. Before Zither young master could even finish speaking, Qin Xiang said indifferently, I respect Ku'er's choice. What Qin Xiang said had undoubtedly clearly stated her stand. Zither young master's expression instantly went gloomy, and his appearance of graceful bearing fell apart completely. His cold and indifferent eyes stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian as he spoke slowly. You, leave Ku'er, and I'll satisfy any request of yours. The way Zither young master spoke contained a commanding tone, and it seemed more like a person of high position talking to a person of low position. Idiot. The corner of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a cold smile when he heard Zither young master, and he slowly spat out a word. Idiot. Duan Ling Tian's words caused everyone present to be dumbstruck. Duan Ling Tian called one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the Zither young master, an idiot? This. At the same time that all the 7-star sword sect disciples were stunned, they looked at Duan Ling Tian with gazes filled with adoration. Presently, besides Ku'er and Li Fei, even the group of people by Duan Ling Tian's side, including Qin Xiang and Zheng Fan, had expressions of astonishment. Duan Ling Tian was too bold. You're courting death. Right when most people were still dumbstruck, Zither young master had suddenly shouted out explosively. His finger trembled as origin energy condensed atop it, then it descended onto a string on the zither in his hand. Thrum. An ear-piercing thrum pricked the eardrums of everyone present. The expression of some 7-star sword sect inner court disciples with comparatively weaker cultivations went pale, and they felt as if their eardrums were about to explode from the vibration. We're right at this instant. Whoosh. An ear-piercing sound of a piercing howl echoed out. One of the strings on the zither in the hands of Zither young master had shot out. It seemed to have transformed into a sharp arrow as it howled out towards Duan Ling Tian, flying straight for Duan Ling Tian's chest, as if wanting to pierce completely through Duan Ling Tian. Above Zither young master, 1,400 plus lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Duan Ling Tian's face went grim. The Zither young master, Zishang, was already a 7th-level nascent soul stage martial artist, and when his strength exploded out completely, it was comparable to the strength of 1,000 ancient mammoths. Presently, the ancient zither in his hand was able to amplify his strength by the strength of 400-plus ancient mammoths. It was obviously a grade 5 spirit weapon. Spirit serpent movement technique. Duan Ling Tian didn't dare hesitate as the origin energy beneath his feet skyrocketed and his entire strength exploded out completely, and at the same time, he utilized the quake energy and intended to dodge. But, at the instant he reacted to the attack, that zither string seemed to have transformed into the scythe of the god of death, and it was only a hair's breadth away from him. It was too fast. Duan Ling Tian's face went gloomy, and he was entirely unable to dodge. Right when Duan Ling Tian intended to use an inscription, humph, a cold snort sounded out. Whoosh. An even swifter sword light flashed past and stopped the zither string that zither young master struck out. Bang. The sword light that was condensed from origin energy exploded, and it destroyed the zither string that zither young master struck out. Zither young master's face flushed red. Then he tasted something sweet in his throat before spitting out a mouthful of blood. His gaze descended onto the person that launched the attack and said with a deep voice, "Peak Master Qin Xiang, I was only testing the strength of the man that Kaer has taken a fancy to. Could it be that you don't think it's beneath you to attack me?" Qin Xian said indifferently, "Kaer is my personal disciple, and her man is someone I must protect." Her words were filled with an extremely protective intention. Zither young master's face went gloomy as he suddenly looked at Duan Ling Tian and shouted coldly, "Kid, if you think you're a man, then bring out your manly heroism and battle me, Zishang. The winner will get Kaer. The loser must forever disappear before Kaer. Do you dare?" Zither young master's tone contained traces of coldness mixed within it. "Zishang, you're shameless." Kaer's beautiful face went grim. The instant that Zither young master attacked Duan Ling Tian, she'd already taken Zither young master to be an enemy. Now, when she heard Zither young master bringing up such a wages to Duan Ling Tian, she was instantly flustered and exasperated. "Kaer, only a strong man is able to protect you. A pu ***, why doesn't have the qualifications to possess you?" Zither young master continued to mock Duan Ling Tian, and his cold and fierce gaze stared at Duan Ling Tian. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian instead started laughing out loudly, and he looked at Zither young master as if he was looked at a clown. "What are you laughing at?" Zither young master's face sank, and he shouted out in anger and annoyance, "What am I laughing at?" The smile on Duan Ling Tian's face was gradually restrained, and he said indifferently, "I'm laughing because you're shameless." "Shameless?" Zither young master's face sank. "Who the F ***K are you to make my fiancé into a wager? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your head?" The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a sneer, and he didn't spare Zither young master's face in the slightest. As soon as these words sounded out, the peak of Dubhe Peak was in a commotion. Duan Ling Tian is too brave. He actually dared insult Zither young master. As expected of the #1 genius in the history of our 7-star sword sect, he doesn't care in the slightest when faced with Zither young master, an outstanding martial artist within the younger generation of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If I had half the natural talent of Duan Ling Tian, it wouldn't come to the extent that I'm still unable to break through to the nascent soul stage until now. The crowd of 7-star sword sect disciples spoke with words that were filled with adoration towards Duan Ling Tian. This kid. Zheng Fan shook his head and smiled. However, needless to say, in his opinion, Duan Ling Tian's current actions caused him to feel a burst of pleasure in his heart. This Zither young master was truly too arrogant. This wasn't the Z clan. No wonder Kaer is unshakably determined to follow him. When she saw this scene, Qin Xian's face revealed a rare wisp of a gratified smile. She was extremely satisfied with this future son-in-law. Satisfying. Zheng Song was excited in his heart. Presently, the one who stood before Duan Ling Tian was the Zither young master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Although he possessed an aloof status within the 7-star sword sect, as he was an outstanding inner court disciple of the 7-star sword sect, and was even the son of the Mizar Peaks master, he only possessed such status within the 7-star sword sect. After he left the 7-star sword sect, he was nothing, and was completely unable to compare to Zither young master. Now, when he saw Zither young master being humiliated, just like his father, Zheng Fan, he was secretly pleased in his heart. Zhou Qing's eyes squinted as she jealously glanced at Kaer. In the past, she was still slightly puzzled. Why would such outstanding young women like Kaer and Li Fei be willing to follow the same man? Now, she seemed to slightly understand. This man had too much charisma. At least, as far as he was concerned, his woman was his reverse scale. and he wouldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting or humiliating them. Zither young master recovered from his shock. He looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked in slightly disbelief. You asked me earlier, who the F*** K I am? He thought he'd heard wrongly. Humph. Duan Ling Tian's icy cold gaze swept Zither young master. Could it be that besides having something wrong with your brain, even your ears have something wrong with them? Hiss, 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 hiss. Waves of gasping suddenly sounded out. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples felt their scalps go numb. This Duan Ling Tian is without end. After all, the person standing before him was no small figure. Zither young master, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and possessed a cultivation at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage. He was something that the current Duan Ling Tian was far from able to compare to. Shriek. Right at this moment, an ear-piercing sound echoed out, and a figure that was like a cloud that covered the sky instantly flashed out to envelop Duan Ling Tian's location. Animal. Duan Ling Tian's face went gloomy. The dark rock that Zither young master rode over seemed to have felt the rage of Zither young master, and it directly flashed towards the culprit, Duan Ling Tian, desiring to pounce on Duan Ling Tian and kill him. Right at this moment, accompanied by a sword light that flashed out, Zheng Fan's voice sounded out. Scram! The sword light followed like a shadow as it directly flashed towards the dark rock, terrifying the dark rock to the point it returned from where it came from, and its enormous body started to shiver. As a demon beast, it was naturally able to feel how formidable that sword light was. Along with the sword light dying out, the ancient horned dragon above Zheng Fan vanished after it. Animal, if you dare attack again, I'll kill you for sure. Zheng Fan's voice revealed traces of coldness, terrifying the dark rock to the point it lowered its head like a human and emitted sorrowful cry. Peak Master Zheng Fan. Zither young master's expression was incomparably unsightly when he saw Zheng Fan interfere. Zheng Fan glanced indifferently at Zither young master. He was friendly to Zither young master earlier because he felt Zither young master had great potential and would sooner or later obtain achievements similar to his. But now that Zither young master had come into conflict with Duan Ling Tian, he naturally knew what was more important. Moreover, not to mention Duan Ling Tian was a disciple of the 7-star sword sect, but just based on Duan Ling Tian's unrivaled natural talent, it was already worth it for him to go all out and protect Duan Ling Tian. Compared to Zither young master, he looked more favorably upon Duan Ling Tian's future. Little bastard. Zither young master's gaze went slightly cold as he stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian. If you have the balls, then don't rely on others and fight me above board. If you don't dare, then you're a PU***Y trash. You don't have the qualifications to possess Ku-Air and don't have the qualifications to protect Ku-Air. What number 1 genius of the 7-star sword sect? According to me, you're cowardly trash. Presently, Zither young master had already found out of Duan Ling Tian's identity from the whispered discussions of the crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. When he'd arrived earlier, this Duan Ling Tian was the person in the discussion of the 7-star sword sect inner court disciple who possessed a natural talent in the martial Tao that far surpassed him. At that time, he felt a wave of unwillingness to accept it in his heart. As far as he was concerned, within the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the people who were able to make him take them seriously were only the 2 people amongst the 5 great young masters that were ranked before him. He was even regarded the other 2 young masters that were ranked after him as beneath his notice. Right when Ku-Air was angered to the point her beautiful face flushed red and she intended to retort, Duan Ling Tian spoke before her, and he indifferently swept Zither young master with his gaze. Zither young master, right? Whether I have the qualifications to possess Ku-Air isn't something you're able to decide, right? One must know one's limitations and must know one's ability. As for asking me to fight you above board, don't you think it's laughable? How old are you, Zither young master? And how old am I, Duan Ling Tian? You want to fight me above board? Don't you feel ashamed? As he finished speaking, a wisp of ridicule appeared on Duan Ling Tian's face. To him, killing Zither young master was extremely simple. A single bone corrosion inscription would be able to send him to hell. The only reason he didn't do that now was because he knew that even if he utilized the bone corrosion inscription, it would be stopped by Zheng Fan and Qin Xiang. As the peak masters of the Seven-Star Sword sect, the two of them would absolutely not allow Zither Young Master to die in the Seven-Star Sword sect. Perhaps, in their eyes, Zither Young Master's crimes didn't warrant death. Duan Ling Tian's words caused Zither Young Master's face to sink. A PU asterisk asterisk Y is a PU asterisk asterisk Y. According to what you said, I, Zither Young Master, will be unable to fight you for my entire lifetime? So long as I want to fight you, I would be bullying the young. Zither Young Master continued to ridicule as he wanted to enrage Duan Ling Tian. But unfortunately, he was bound to be disappointed. Duan Ling Tian had a calm expression as he said indifferently, "If you really want to fight me, it isn't impossible. 3 years, after 3 years, I'll fight you above board." 3 years. Duan Ling Tian's words were filled with strong confidence. Zither Young Master's eyes squinted as cold lightly flickered within. He gazed at Zheng Fan and Qin Xiang who stood nearby and noticed both of them had calm expression, seeming to not be shocked by Duan Ling Tian's words, and his heart couldn't help but sink. Meanwhile, 3 years? What a good plan. Duan Ling Tian's currently only at the age of 21, and he's already at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. With his natural talent, it isn't difficult to surpass Zither Young Master in another 3 years. After 3 years, Duan Ling Tian will surely be able to defeat Zither Young Master. I'm confident. I'm confident as well. The crowd of Seven-Star Sword Sect Inner Court disciples were filled with confidence towards Duan Ling Tian. The whispered discussions of these Inner Court disciples entered into the ears of Zither Young Master, and it caused his face to sink. This Duan Ling Tian is only 21? A 21-year-old 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist. Such natural talent does indeed surpass me. Even he hadn't stepped into the 9th level of the Origin Core stage at the age of 21. 2 years. I'll give you 2 years. Zither Young Master looked at Duan Ling Tian, and his words had no intention of bargaining as he said in a low voice, "I hope that after 2 years, you, this number 1 genius of the Seven-Star Sword sect, won't be shrinking away and relying on the strength of others. At that time, I'll defeat you and even kill you. I want to let Ku'er know that only I, Zither Young Master, Zishang, is the man that's most suitable for her." After he finished, Zither Young Master's figure flashed to return to the back of the dark rock. When he left, he had a flustered and exasperated expression. Compared to when he arrived, he was completely like a different person. 2 years. Duan Ling Tian gaze slightly moved to stare at the back of Zither Young Master, who rode the dark rock into the distance, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer as he muttered, "As you wish." That Zither Young Master, Zishang, is too shameless. Zheng Song was slightly outraged for Duan Ling Tian. As far as he was concerned, if Duan Ling Tian had 3 years of time, then with Duan Ling Tian's natural talent in the martial Dao, surpassing Zither Young Master wasn't a difficult task. But 2 years of time. Duan Ling Tian wanting to defeat Zither Young Master in 2 years was extremely difficult. Duan Ling Tian shrugged and said indifferently, "Actually, in my opinion, there isn't a big difference between 2 years or 3 years. Since he said 2 years, then it is 2 years. In this way, it might be able to give me some pressure and allow me to stimulate the potential within my body." As he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian was filled with strong confidence. This caused the Seven-Star Sword Sect Inner Court disciples that were present to be filled with admiration. Duan Ling Tian desired to defeat Zither Young Master 2 years from now. If he's able to do it, the Duan Ling Tian might become the peerless prodigy in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that surpasses the 5 great young masters. When they thought of how the peerless prodigy would be from their Seven-Star Sword sect, their hearts were filled with excitement. Ku'er and Li Fei's gazes descended onto Duan Ling Tian and were filled with extremely tender love. "Young master, this is my master, the Peak Master of Alcade Peak." In next to no time, Ku'er introduced Qin Xiang to Duan Ling Tian. Then she had a blushed face as she looked at Qin Xiang. "Master, this is my young master." Ku'er had an embarrassed expression when she looked at Qin Xiang. Peak Master. Duan Ling Tian slightly bowed to Qin Xiang, as she was Ku Er's master and had the qualifications to make him bow. Qin Xiang glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian. Looks like before you, my face is greater than the sect leader. Qin Xiang remembered that even when he was facing the sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect, Linghu Jinhong, the young man before her had never once bowed. Yet now, before her, he'd bowed. You're Ku Er's master, so you're an elder to me, Duan Ling Tian said with a slight smile. Ku Er's taste is very good. Qin Xiang nodded and smiled at Duan Ling Tian. The gaze she shot at him contained the flavor of a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. Ku Er is an orphan, so in the future, this master of hers, will be like her parent. You have to be good to her. If you let me find out that you betrayed her, I will absolutely not forgive you. As she finished speaking, Qin Xiang's eyes emitted a wisp of coldness. The imposing manner of a void initiation stage expert swept at Duan Ling Tian, causing him to instantly feel as if he was in the center of a storm. Don't worry, Peak Master. In my eyes, Ku Er is more important than my life, Duan Ling Tian said sincerely. Qin Xiang nodded. Then she left with Elder Bai, who was by her side. Zuiqing followed them and left. Zheng Fan looked at Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes squinted as he asked curiously, Kid, 2 years of time. Are you really confident? Peak Master, if you don't believe me, we can make a bet. Let's bet 10 million gold. How about it? Duan Ling Tian's face revealed a smile that was like a fox. This caused Zheng Fan to be unable to refrain from becoming vigilant. Then he rolled his eyes at Duan Ling Tian. Kid, you don't seem like a person who would suffer a loss. Only an idiot would bet with you. When they saw Duan Ling Tian and Zheng Fan had such a casual relationship, besides Zheng Fan, everyone present was completely stunned. Most people couldn't help but suspect in their heart. Was the middle-aged man that stood before their eyes and rolled his eyes at Duan Ling Tian really their Seven-Star Sword Sect's Mizar Peak's master? After Zheng Fan and Zheng Song left, Duan Ling Tian brought Ku Er and Li Fei to leave Dubhe Peak and arrived at Migres Peak. Everywhere they passed, all the Migres Peak disciples greeted them respectfully. Today, Duan Ling Tian's actions on the peak of Dubhe Peak had once again filled them with admiration. In the presence of the sect leader, he said he didn't respect the sect leader. Since the establishment of the Seven-Star Sword sect, Duan Ling Tian is probably the first person to be so brave. Scoundrel, you still cultivate at Migres Peak now? Isn't the cultivation environment on Dubhe Peak much better? Li Fei asked curiously. Little Fei, you'll know soon. Duan Ling Tian smiled mysteriously, and he held Ku Er and Li Fei with one hand each, then braved the countless fiery and envious gazes to enter Migres Peak. Senior brother Duan Ling Tian's luck in romance is truly enviable. Yeah, the 2 young women by his side are absolutely the most beautiful female disciples I've seen in the Seven-Star Sword sect. We're both humans and are both men. Why is the difference between us so huge? The words of the crowd of Migres Peak disciples was filled with extreme envy. After Duan Ling Tian confirmed that no one was following him, he brought Ku Er and Li Fei along the remote mountain path to ascend the peak of Migres Peak. As she gazed at the spacious peak of Migres Peak, Li Fei asked curiously, Scoundrel, why did you bring us here? The peak of Migres Peak was covered in mist and clouds that were like a vast expanse of whiteness, and nothing could be seen. Come. Duan Ling Tian brought Li Fei and Ku Er to the side of the precipice, then lightly smiled as he said, Ku Er, little Fei, you two stand here. When we go down in a moment, your movements must be slow. I'll be looking at the 2 of you from below. Below? Duan Ling Tian's words caused Ku Er and Li Fei to have perplexed expressions. In the next moment, their faces went pale, because they saw Duan Ling Tian had actually leaped off the precipice. Their faces went ghastly pale, and for a moment, their minds were in chaos, and they almost forgot what Duan Ling Tian had said to them earlier. Young master, Ku Er stuck her head out and looked down the precipice as she called out, and her voice contained slight trembling within it. All right, you two come down. Suddenly, a voice sounded out from below, causing the gazes of Ku Er and Li Fei to light up, and only now did they realize that Duan Ling Tian wasn't courting death when he did that earlier. Duan Ling Tian stood on the tilted tree, and his hand seemed to have transformed into a fan as it started flapping. For a moment, the clouds and mist above him gradually dispersed. This, Kuer and Li Fei's beautiful eyes shone when they saw Duan Ling Tian, who stood atop the tilted tree, as they never expected that there was actually such a tilted tree growing at the side of the peak of Migres Peak. Come. Under Duan Ling Tian's beckoning, Kuer and Li Fei leaped down successively and descended onto the tilted tree. Meanwhile, the clouds and mist converged together once again, blocking out the tilted tree. Now, even if someone were to stick their heads out from the peak of Migres Peak, they would be unable to notice the tilted tree. Scoundrel, what place is this? As they walked within the cave passageway, Li Fei asked curiously. You too will know shortly. Duan Ling Tian beat around the bush and followed closely behind the two young women to enter the stalactite cave. This is, as they gazed at the stalactites above the stalactite cave, the two girls were shocked. Young master, these wouldn't be 10,000-year stalactites, right? Kuer took a deep breath and asked with slight disbelief. Exactly, these are 10,000-year stalactites, and it's here that I found the 10,000-year stalactite milk that both of you drink. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and when he recalled the scene of him discovering this place, he couldn't help but sigh slightly. This could be considered his fortuitous encounter as well. Kuer and Li Fei came to a sudden understanding. Squeak, squeak. Right at this moment, a clear cry sounded out, and a gold and fluffy little head stuck out from beneath Kuer's sleeve. Little Gold. When Duan Ling Tian saw the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse, he couldn't help but think about the two variant little pythons. He sighed in his heart. I wonder how Little Black and Little White are after they left with Han Xuanai? Han Xuanai dotes on them so much, they're surely doing great. Now, Duan Ling Tian had let it go as well. As far as he was concerned, so long as the two little pythons were doing great and were able to acquire a better future, then even if he was unable to see them again in the future, he would still be happy for them. Squeak. Suddenly, the little gold mouse flashed out from beneath Kuer's sleeve and directly pounced onto the wall at the side of the stalactite cave. Then it kicked off from the wall and leaped onto the 10,000-year stalactite. Subsequently, a scene that caused Duan Ling Tian's group of three to be astounded had appeared. They saw the little gold mouse lay on the 10,000-year stalactite, then actually start nibbling and eating it. It only left the 10,000-year stalactite in satisfaction when it are to the point its little stomach bulged, then lay motionless at the side of the stalactite cave. Its fluffy body and its currently bulging stomach made it seem chubby, and it was extremely cute. Another glutton. Duan Ling Tian was speechless. He glanced at the gap that was nibble out from the 10,000-year stalactite, and his heart was pained. This little gold really recklessly destroys natural treasures. Young master, where's Little Black and Little White? Suddenly, Kuer seemed to have thought of something, and she looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression of anticipation. Yeah, scoundrel, I haven't seen Little Black and Little White for a very long time. Li Fei looked at Duan Ling Tian as well. Duan Ling Tian sighed. Although he knew that he'd have to face this moment sooner or later, he never imagined it would be so quick. He didn't conceal anything when facing the two girls, and he slowly spoke of the entire sequence of events. Little Black and Little White have left. A wisp of mist appeared on Kuer's beautiful eyes when she found out about everything, and her pretty face was covered in an expression of reluctance. She'd seen those two variant little pythons grow up with her own two eyes, and she had extremely deep feelings towards them. Now, when she found out that they'd left, she felt a wave of sorrow in her heart. Little sister Kuer will still be able to see Little Black and Little White in the future. Didn't you hear what Scoundrel said? Little Black and Little White have only followed the demon beast by that mysterious young girl's side to cultivate. They're not gone forever. Li Fei consoled Kuer in a gentle voice. Although she was slightly sad as well, but it wasn't as much as Kuer. Besides Duan Ling Tian, the two little pythons had always been closest with Kuer. Perhaps it was because when they'd just been born and emerged from their shells, the first thing that entered their eyes was Duan Ling Tian and Kuer. They'd taken Duan Ling Tian and Kuer to be their parents, and their love for them was extraordinary. Yeah, Kuer, Little Fei is right. Little Black and Little White will surely return. Their home is with us. Although Duan Ling Tian wasn't confident in his heart, he still persuaded Ku'er as he was able to understand Ku'er's current feelings. That day, when Little Black and Little White had just left, he had this exact same feeling. It was as if a piece of his heart was sliced off. That sort of feeling was extremely painful. Squeak, squeak, seeming to have perceived Ku'er's sense of loss. The little gold mouse that was originally laying on the ground lazily cried out twice. Then it leaped up once again to descend onto Ku'er's shoulder, and its little head rubbed Ku'er's face as it consoled Ku'er like a human. Little Gold, I'm fine. Ku'er held the little gold mouse in her hand and lightly smiled. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse nodded, and its pair of jade eyes flickered with a joyous sheen. Little Gold's cultivation. Earlier, Duan Ling Tian didn't intentionally use his spiritual force to inspect the cultivation of the little gold mouse, but now when he slightly inspected it, he instead was clearly able to gain insight of the little gold mouse's strength. The little gold mouse had actually broken through to the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. He still remembered that the little gold mouse seemed to only be at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage 1 year ago. Looks like the 10,000-year stalactite milk allowed the little gold to achieve rebirth as well. Presently, the natural talent and potential of the little gold mouse as a jade-eyed heavenly mouse ought to have already been developed to the limit. Even if little gold didn't consume the 10,000-year stalactite milk, with the bloodline within its body, it would attain the cultivation of Demon Emperor sooner or later. Now, after it has consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk, I wonder what sort of changes will occur. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and he was filled with anticipation. Little Gold's current strength is obviously only a step away from the half-step void stage. It won't be long before it's able to break through once again. What would happen after a jade-eyed heavenly mouse consumed large quantities of 10,000-year stalactite milk was something that even the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor contained no records of. 3 days later, according to the voice transmission the sect leader, Linghu Jinhong, sent him that day, Duan Ling Tian left the stalactite cave of Migrez Peak and headed to Dubby Hall on Dubby Peak. Dubby Hall was precisely the cultivation location of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader. I wonder why the sect leader would ask me to come see him today. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and he was filled with bewilderment. He knew nothing of the purpose Linghu Jinhong called him here today. As the cultivation location of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader, Dubby Hall was slightly larger when compared to Mizar Hall and Migrez Hall. When Duan Ling Tian had just arrived outside Dubby Hall, he saw a gray-clothed young man walking towards him. The young man was around the age of 25 or 26. He had an ordinary appearance and an emotionless expression, and he held a sheathed sword in his hand as he slowly walked over. Looking at the symbol on the young man's clothes, he was obviously an inner court disciple. "You're Duan Ling Tian?" The young man stood before Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes emitted a bright light as he asked in a calm tone. "Yes." Duan Ling Tian nodded, and he was shocked in his heart. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime worth of experience of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, he was able to discern that although the age of this young man was younger than the Mizar Peak's master's son, Zheng Song, his cultivation was much more advanced than Zheng Song. If his judgment wasn't wrong, then the cultivation of this person had already stepped into the 4th level of the nascent soul stage. His age feels to be even younger than Zither Young Master. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. "Master has been waiting for you." The young man called out to Duan Ling Tian before turning around and leading Duan Ling Tian to walk into Dubby Hall. "Master." After the young man brought Duan Ling Tian into the audience hall, he respectfully and reverently bowed to the middle-aged man within. Then he turned around to leave and stand guard outside the audience hall like a door guardian deity. Sect leader. Duan Ling Tian looked at the middle-aged man and lightly smiled. The middle-aged man was precisely the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Linghu Jinhong. That person from before was actually the sect leader's disciple. Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. Linghu Jinhong stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian, towards this 7-star sword sect disciple that abruptly rose swiftly in the sect, and his heart was filled with extreme shock. Duan Ling Tian's rise was virtually a legend of the Seven-Star Sword sect. Duan Ling Tian. Linghu Jinhong's stiff face revealed a wisp of a light smile. I heard that the Zither young master came to our Seven-Star Sword sect 3 days ago. You fixed a 2-year agreement with him. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and he wasn't surprised that Linghu Jinhong knew of this matter. What a joke. Linghu Jinhong was the sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect, and his informants were everywhere throughout the entire Seven-Star Sword sect. As expected of the #1 genius since the establishment of my Seven-Star Sword sect, Duan Ling Tian, I'm truly awaiting the scene of you battling the Zither young master 2 years from now. Linghu Jinhong glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian, then changed the topic. Do you know why I asked you here this time? Duan Ling Tian shook his head to show he didn't know. Do you know that within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there are still another 4 top sects besides our Seven-Star Sword sect? Linghu Jinhong asked. I've heard of it. Duan Ling Tian nodded as he'd heard Xiong Quan mention it before. Sect leader, could the reason you called me here be related to the other 4 sects? Linghu Jinhong was slightly surprised by Duan Ling Tian's penetrating remark, and he nodded. 1 year from now, it's the day of the martial competition between the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. I asked you over here today mainly to talk to you about this. Martial competition? Duan Ling Tian's brows raised, and he was slightly curious. The martial competition is a tradition that the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom have passed down for many years, and it is held every 3 years. On the day of the martial competition, the younger generation below the age of 30 of the 5 great top sects carry out a martial exchange. When Linghu Jinhong spoke up to this point, he sighed. In the recent years, there hasn't been any outstanding disciples within the younger generation of our Seven-Star Sword sect. During the martial competition that was held 2 years ago and the other that was held 5 years ago, amongst the disciples of our Seven-Star Sword sect that participated in the martial competition, there wasn't even a single person who entered the top 3. Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up. Martial competition? Seems to be slightly interesting. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian could feel Linghu Jinhong's helplessness. The Seven-Star Sword sect was the publicly acknowledged #1 sect of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom after all, but no one Seven-Star Sword sect disciple was actually able to enter the top 3 in the martial competition for 2 consecutive competitions, and this undoubtedly showed that the younger generation of the Seven-Star Sword sect was of no use. Presently, the domineering status of the Seven-Star Sword sect relied on the experts of the older generation. It could be imagined that in the Seven-Star Sword sect of the future, when the older generation experts gradually retired, then if there were no promising people in the younger generation, the Seven-Star Sword sect would surely walk towards decline. Are the young disciples of the other sects extremely strong? Duan Ling Tian asked curiously. Linghu Jinhong nodded. I presume you've heard of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. 2 of them are from the other 2 sections. Besides that, within the other 4 sects, there are still a few figures that have natural talents only inferior to the 5 great young masters. What sect leader means is, you want me to participate in the martial competition amongst the younger generation of the 5 great sects next year? Duan Ling Tian asked. Yes. Linghu Jinhong nodded, and he looked at Duan Ling Tian with a burning gaze. Presently, amongst the young disciples under the age of 30 of our Seven-Star Sword sect, and possess a comparatively outstanding natural talent. Then besides my disciple, Huang Ji, the Fekta Peak's master's disciple, Meng Qiu, and the Mizar Peak's master's son, Zheng Song, there is only you. Although the 3 of them possess strengths that are stronger than you, their ages are far older than you. You're different than them. You possess boundless potential. 1 year later, I don't have extravagant hopes that you'll be able to obtain the top 3 ranks within the martial competition. I mainly want you to go gain experience. Once another 4 years pass, I believe that it's undoubtedly an extremely easy thing for you to obtain the honor of #1 in the martial competition. Linghu Jinhong spoke of his plans. Gain experience? The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched. Looks like this sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect really has no confidence in me. But with a quick thought, Duan Ling Tian came to an understanding. Even though the natural talent he revealed was formidable, he was only a 9th-level origin core stage martial artist right now after all. Not to mention the outstanding disciples of the other 4 great sects. Even if it was the 3 comparatively outstanding disciples of the 7-star sword sect, he was still far inferior to them. The sect leader's plans were extremely obvious. 1 year later, he would bring Duan Ling Tian to go experience the martial competition of the 5 great sections. Then when the martial competition of 4 years later arrives, only then would the sect leader would be eager for Duan Ling Tian to able to bring honor to the 7-star sword sect and obtain the honor of being ranked number 1 in the martial competition. Duan Ling Tian. In the following year, the sect will spare no cost to foster you. From today onwards, you can stay and cultivate in my Dubhi Hall. This Dubhi Hall of mine is the location of the main spirit point amongst the 9 great spirit points of the 7-star sword sect, and the cultivation environment here is the best within the entire 7-star sword sect. Linghu Jinhong looked at Duan Ling Tian and said slowly. He'd obviously completely entrusted the hope of the 7-star sword sect onto Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised by what Linghu Jinhong said. After all, Linghu Jinhong was currently determined to make him obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition 4 years from now. This honor had an extraordinary significance to the 7-star sword sect, as it represented that the younger generation of the 7-star sword sect had risen up once again. The best cultivation environment. Although when Duan Ling Tian had just arrived at Dubhi Peak, he'd noticed that the cultivation environment here surpassed Migres Hall and Mizar Hall. But compared to his stalactite cave, it was instead an extremely great distance away. Sect leader, I'm already accustomed to my current cultivation location. Duan Ling Tian politely refused Linghu Jinhong's good intentions. As far as he was concerned, the stalactite cave he discovered was the place that truly deserved the title of best cultivation location in the 7-star sword sect. Of course, he didn't say it out loud, as the stalactite cave was his secret. At least, before he left the 7-star sword sect, it was his secret. Duan Ling Tian Yu. Linghu Jinhong never expected that Duan Ling Tian would refuse his good intentions, and he was stunned for a moment before continuing to persuade. Duan Ling Tian. A good cultivation location is able to increase your speed of cultivation. The Dubhi Peak is your best choice. You can be at ease. I'm only asking you to cultivate in Dubhi Peak and have no intention of taking you as my disciple. With your natural talent, I don't feel I have the qualifications to be your master. As he finished speaking, Linghu Jinghong laughed in self-ridicule. Sect leader, you've misunderstood. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. I'm the type of person that would at least need a year or 2 to adapt to a new place after I've become accustomed to a place. Honestly speaking, I've only barely adapted to my cultivation location on Migres Peak. If you ask me to suddenly cultivate at Dubhi Hall, I'm worried the advancement of my cultivation would be even slower. Linghu Jinhong's magnanimity caused Duan Ling Tian to feel heartfelt reverence. He was able to discern that Linghu Jinhong was a true noble person and was absolutely not someone the deceased peak master of the Migres Peak, Wu Dao, could compare to. So that's how it is. Linghu Jinhong came to a sudden understanding, and he didn't doubt the truth of what Duan Ling Tian said. As far as he was concerned, if it wasn't for this, it would be impossible that Duan Ling Tian was unwilling to cultivate in Dubhi Hall. After all, the cultivation environment in Dubhi Hall far surpassed any other place in the 7-star sword sect. Of course, the only reason Linghu Jinhong would think like this was because he completely had no knowledge of the existence of the stalactite cave. Otherwise, he would think like this. Since it's like this, then I won't force you. During these 4 years, if you have any needs for cultivating, like medicinal pills, you can look for me and I'll try my best to help you. Linghu Jinhong promised Duan Ling Tian. For the sake of Duan Ling Tian being able to bring honor to the 7-star sword sect in the martial competition 4 years from now, he decided to spare no cost in fostering Duan Ling Tian. All for the sake of allowing Duan Ling Tian to obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition. Then I won't be courteous. Duan Ling Tian nodded with a smile and didn't refuse, and his eyes emitted a bright light. Looks like I can save a great amount of money when I cultivate in the future. After bidding his farewell to Linghu Jinhong and leaving, Duan Ling Tian once again saw the young man that stood guard outside the audience hall. This young man ought to be that personal disciple the sect leader, Linghu Jin Hong, had mentioned earlier, Huang Ji. Huang Ji was younger than Zheng Song, yet far stronger than Zheng Song. Presumable, during the martial competition 1 year from now, the sect leader, Linghu Jin Hong, would entrust most of his hope on Huang Ji. This Huang Ji is at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage. In 1 year, if nothing unexpected happens, then he ought to be able to break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered with a flowing light, and it was filled with an inexplicable feeling. I wonder, when that martial competition begins 1 year from now, until what extent would my cultivation be able to break through to? Duan Ling Tian wasn't courteous in the slightest after obtaining Linghu Jin Hong's promise. So long as he needed any material, he would directly ask for it from Linghu Jin Hong. Every time, Linghu Jin Hong would be able to prepare all the material for him within a single day. The sect leader is really efficient. When Duan Ling Tian walked out of Dubhe Hall once again, he had a brilliant smile on his face. But when he arrived at Migres Peak, the smile on his face froze. Humph! With a single glance, he'd noticed the middle-aged man that was walking towards him from the distance, and his face sank. It was precisely the Migres Peak outer court elder, Zhao Lin. Duan Ling Tian. Zhao Lin noticed Duan Ling Tian, and cold lights flashed within his eyes. Duan Ling Tian glanced indifferently at Zhao Lin. Then he circumnavigated Zhao Lin and directly headed into Migres Peak. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian's eardrums trembled as Zhao Lin sent a voice transmission. Duan Ling Tian, I won't let you off until you hand over the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Duan Ling Tian's figure slightly stopped as he turned around to look coldly at Zhao Lin in the eye, then replied via voice transmission. Then feel free to come at me, Elder Zhao Lin. I only hope that at that time, you won't regret it. Regret? Zhao Lin started laughing and shrugged it off. Duan Ling Tian, I know your natural talent in the martial Dao is formidable, but if you want to surpass me, Zhao Lin, then without bitter cultivation of 10 years, it's simply fool's talk. I really don't believe that within this 10 years of time, I, Zhao Lin, won't be able to find an opportunity to kill you. Zhao Lin's voice transmission was filled with icy cold, killing intent. Then I'll wait and see. Duan Ling Tian calmly glanced at Zhao Lin before entering Migres Peak. After he confirmed that Zhao Lin wasn't following him, Duan Ling Tian directly returned to the stalactite cave. Then he withdrew a pile of materials and started refining a spirit weapon. He wanted to refine 2 grade 7 spirit swords. These 2 grade 7 spirit swords were refined for Li Fei and Ku Er. For the sake of avoiding unnecessary trouble, Duan Ling Tian held back when refining the spirit weapons, but even then, the 2 grade 7 spirit swords were still bestowed with an amplification of 30% by him. Grade 7 spirit swords that provided an amplification of 30% strength. Throughout the entire 7-star sword sect, besides the sword in Hu Shuifeng's possession, there would probably only be these 2. After finishing the refinement of the 2 grade 7 spirit swords, Duan Ling Tian started refining medicinal pills. The medicinal pill he wanted to refine was a grade 7 medicinal pill that surpassed the origin strengthening pill. This grade 7 medicinal pill was able to assist a 9th level origin core stage martial artist to swiftly step into the nascent soul stage. After quite some effort, the pill was completed. With this nascent break pill, I can avoid a great deal of trouble when I intend to step into the nascent soul stage. As he gazed at the 3 medicinal pills in his hand that had flowing lights revolve around them, Duan Ling Tian's face revealed a satisfied smile. 3 nascent break pills with a purity of over 90%. If it was taken out into the open, it was sufficient to cause people to fight to the death for it. After he passed the 2 grade 7 spirit swords to Ku Er and Li Fei and had a romp with them for some time, Duan Ling Tian returned to the stalactite cave and sat on the stone platform before lightly pondering. Although the sect leader has entrusted all his hope on the martial competition 4 years from now, I might not be in the 7-star sword sect at that time. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered. He was confident that with his natural talent and the resources he was able to utilize currently, he would surely be able to go further after 4 years. His target was to step into the void stage after 4 years. When he stepped into the void stage, then continuing to stay in the 7-star sword sect was of no use at all. During the martial competition 1 year from now, I must give the sect leader some justification. Duan Ling Tian's gaze gradually became firm. Extremely strong confidence was emitted from his body and seemed to transform into a shapeless force that would even dare to pierce through the heavens. Cultivate. Duan Ling Tian closed his eyes, and his mind completely immersed itself into cultivating. 9 Dragons War's sovereign technique, Wind WIRM form. Within Duan Ling Tian's body, origin energy ceaselessly roiled, as if it would never be exhausted. The vast origin energy endlessly surged before finally gathering within Duan Ling Tian's Dantian. The origin core within the Dantian had already condensed and strengthened to the limit. The nascent soul stage is like its name. The nascent soul emerges from the shattered core, and that is the nascent soul stage. Duan Ling Tian, who possessed the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, wasn't unfamiliar with the nascent soul stage. He knew that if he wanted to break through to the nascent soul stage now, then he must make the origin core within his Dantian shatter from being too full and allow the nascent soul to emerge from within. Only in this way would he be able to truly step into the nascent soul stage. Swish. The origin energy within Duan Ling Tian's body ceaselessly flowed and churned, as if it had transformed into a surging river that flowed continuously. His origin energy was endlessly strengthening and undergoing a qualitative change, all for the sake of the moment that the nascent soul emerged from the shattered core. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian's entire heart and soul were immersed into his cultivating, and he was completely concentrated. He did his best to dissolve the medicinal strength of the origin strengthening pill. After the medicinal strength of one origin strengthening pill was dissolved, he didn't even open his eyes before directly swallowing another origin strengthening pill and continuing to cultivate, repeating the process again and again. Time flashed by swiftly. Duan Ling Tian didn't know how much time had passed. All he knew was that he'd ceaselessly consumed origin strengthening pills and ceaselessly condensed the origin energy within his body, all for the sake of charging into the nascent soul stage. The nascent soul stage was his target. When he was hungry, he opened his eyes and roasted some meat to eat. Accurately speaking, it was some meat to swallow. Wolfing down his food was a phrase that could perfectly describe the scenes of Duan Ling Tian violently eating and drinking these past few days. During this period, Ku Er and Li Fei had come look for him twice. But every time, when they saw Duan Ling Tian who was immersed in cultivation, they wouldn't disturb him and would only silently watch Duan Ling Tian for some time before leaving. No matter what their man did, they would support him without condition, because he was their life and everything to them. This day, I've arrived at the limit of the bottleneck. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian opened his eyes, and he revealed a slightly excited expression. With a raise of his hand, 3 medicinal pills had appeared within his palm. It was precisely the nascent break pill. After swallowing down the 3 nascent break pills, Duan Ling Tian continued cultivating, and the origin energy within his body had become violent as it endlessly charged at the final bottleneck. The origin core within Duan Ling Tian's Dantian expanded endlessly and would shatter from being too full at any moment. One day, bang! Within the stalactite cave, a shapeless wave of air stretched out from the body of the young man that sat cross-legged on the stone platform. It caused the air to roil as it spread out, transforming into circle after circle of ripples. In the next moment, the young man opened his eyes, which were like a dazzling array of stars as bright lights flickered within. After a short moment, the bright light gradually dispersed, and the young man's eyes returned to calmness. Finally, nascent soul stage. Duan Ling Tian's face revealed a smile, and he was extremely excited. He'd finally succeeded in breaking through to the nascent soul stage. Whoosh! Under his excitement, Duan Ling Tian's origin energy skyrocketed. Instantly, ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form one by one above him, and their imposing manner were like rainbows that shot into the sky. A total of 211 ancient mammoth silhouettes. Similarly to when I was at the nascent soul stage, I still possessed the strength of 11 ancient mammoths, more than a martial artist with a similar cultivation. The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a smile. The strength of 11 ancient mammoths was the strength of the body that was bestowed to me by the spirit serpent form and raging python form. At that time, Duan Ling Tian cultivated the first form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the spirit serpent form, and during the body tempering stage, his strength far surpassed the strength of a martial artist with a similar cultivation as him. When he was at the 9th level of the body tempering stage, his strength even exceeded the strength of ordinary 9th level body tempering stage martial artists by the strength of 2 ancient mammoths. After he broke through to the core formation stage, the second form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the raging python form, bestowed the method of using origin energy to temper the body to Duan Ling Tian, and it even allowed Duan Ling Tian's body to become strong to a state that could be called abnormal. An ordinary 9th level core formation stage martial artist possessed a strength comparable to the strength of 12 ancient mammoths. But when Duan Ling Tian was at the 9th level of the core formation stage, his strength was comparable to the strength of 23 ancient mammoths. It was almost double the strength of an ordinary 9th level core formation stage martial artist. This extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths had always been with Duan Ling Tian until now. Coupled with the quake energy that was bestowed upon me by the third form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the WRM Python form, relying on the grade 6 spirit sword that the withered old man left behind that day. So long as it isn't a second-level nascent soul stage martial artist who possess a grade 6 spirit weapon or above, I can kill them. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart, and he had an initial estimate of his current strength. Of course, if it was a second-level nascent soul stage martial artist that possessed a grade 6 spirit weapon, then if Duan Ling Tian were to go against the martial artist, he would surely be in a dangerous situation. As my cultivation advances, the extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths and the quake energy will become of lesser and lesser help to me. Duan Ling Tian knew very well that in the future, he might be able to rule over martial artists with a similar cultivation as him by relying on the extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths and quake energy. But once he encountered a martial artist with a higher cultivation than him, it would become more and more strenuous for him. Just like now, so long as that second-level nascent soul stage martial artist also possessed a grade 6 spirit weapon, then unless Duan Ling Tian can gain an advantage by making the first strike, otherwise, if he were to go head-on with the martial artist, Duan Ling Tian would die without a doubt. The nascent soul emerges from the shattered core. Unconsciously, Duan Ling Tian seemed to have thought of something and started to use his internal vision. Presently, the origin core within his dantian had completely vanished. At the location where the origin core used to be, a ball of milky white gas that was the shape of a baby seemed lifelike as it sat cross-legged there. This ball of baby-shaped gas is completely formed from origin energy. Through the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Ling Tian knew this like the back of his hand. The pressing matter at hand is to improve my cultivation as soon as possible. Once my cultivation encounters a bottleneck, I'll stop cultivating right away, then rely on the high-grade earth rank movement technique, whirlwind, to comprehend wind force. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, then withdrew a medicinal pill and swallowed it. This medicinal pill was a medicinal pill that Duan Ling Tian had refined before he started cultivating, and it was named Nascent Nurturing Pill. It was a medicinal pill that was consumed by nascent soul stage martial artists to cultivate. It was similar to the Origin Increasing Pill consumed by core formation stage martial artists and the Origin Strengthening Pill that was consumed by Origin core stage martial artists. Continue cultivating. Presently, after his cultivation had broken through to the nascent soul stage, Duan Ling Tian was able to perceive that when he circulated the mental cultivation method of the fourth form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Wind WIRM form, it was much easier. The origin energy within his body flowed ceaselessly as it charged towards the next level, and it seemed as if it didn't know exhaustion. Duan Ling Tian forgot the time as he cultivated. Spring had become winter, and in the blink of an eye, 11 months had passed just like this. Stalactite cave, atop the stone platform. Duan Ling Tian slowly opened his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a bitter smile, and he let out a long sigh. This bottleneck is truly a headache. I wonder how long has it been? I should go out and have a look. Duan Ling Tian's figure flashed to leave the stalactite cave and stand on the tilted tree. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was at the south of Cloud Continent, thus it was difficult to see snow during the winters here. Even then, Duan Ling Tian was still able to sense traces of coldness. Of course, this little bit of coldness was nothing to him. With his current strength, so long as his origin energy coiled around his body, he would be easily capable of withstanding severe cold. Unfortunately, although my cultivation has broken through to the nascent soul stage, my spiritual force doesn't have the slightest sign of wanting to break through. Duan Ling Tian let out a long breath of air and was slightly feeling a sense of loss. His spiritual force searched the peak of Migres Peak for a while. Then when he confirmed there were no people, Duan Ling Tian ascended the peak and headed down the mountain. After he arrived nearby the trade hall, he asked about a little bit, and he found out that it had already been 11 months since he went into closed-door cultivation that day. 11 months. The sect leader said that we would leave half a month earlier for the martial competition this time. At the same time that Duan Ling Tian stepped on the chain bridge, he thought in his heart. In other words, there's still half a month of time before I have to leave. After he left Migres Peak, Duan Ling Tian first went to Alcade Peak to see Li Fei. Then he headed to Alcade Hall on Dubby Peak to see Kuair. After not meeting each other for almost a year, his heart was filled with the feeling of missing the two little girls. Only after he met the two little girls did he find out that during the time he was in closed-door cultivation, they'd come see him more than once. This caused his heart to feel warm. Needless to say, the feeling of being cared for was indeed nice. After having a romp with the two little girls, Duan Ling Tian returned to the peak of Migres Peak once more, and he stood on the tilted tree, feeling the piercingly cold wind of winter. The seven-star sword sect inner court disciples' attire on Duan Ling Tian's body fluttered, and the origin energy that appeared automatically to withstand the severe cold was withdrawn by him. Instantly, the cold wind assaulted him, almost completely enveloping Duan Ling Tian within it. Icy coldness that pierced into the heart spread throughout Duan Ling Tian's body, causing Duan Ling Tian to be unable to refrain from shivering. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, then gritted his teeth and endured it. He was comprehending the characteristics of wind under such a severe environment. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, if he wanted to comprehend wind force, then before he cultivated whirlwind, he must have a certain degree of understanding towards the wind. Wind was something that gathered gentleness, violent, coldness, and swiftness together. Boundlessly profound. Presently, the winter wind that Duan Ling Tian was facing contained three characteristics of wind: fierceness, coldness, and swiftness. As for gentleness, that was a characteristic of a breeze. Duan Ling Tian stood on the tilted tree for an entire day, only circulating his origin energy to completely remove that coldness that had invaded his body when he was freezing to the point his face went ghastly pale and he gritted his teeth tightly. His entire body returned to warmth. Wind. Duan Ling Tian closed his eyes and silently recalled the cold wind that had assaulted him for an entire day. The cold wind was violent and ruthless, cold and bone-piercing, swift and fierce. Duan Ling Tian stood on the tilted tree like this as he gradually entered a marvelous state, seeming to have transformed into a sculpture as he stood there unmoving. The cold wind was still piercingly cold, yet it was unable to assault and pierce through the surface of Duan Ling Tian's body that was suffused with origin energy. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. 3 days passed. Duan Ling Tian finally made headway on the 10th day. Swoosh. Duan Ling Tian's figure lightly moved, and a strange aura accompanied his origin energy to suffuse out. Wind. So that's how it is. Duan Ling Tian muttered, and the corners of his mouth bloomed into a brilliant smile. With a raise of his hand, a strand of an extremely swift and fierce aura suffused out. This is wind force. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. At practically the same moment, 100 plus ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air above Duan Ling Tian. Currently, Duan Ling Tian didn't utilize the strength of his body or origin energy in the slightest. The strength of over 100 ancient mammoths? What's going on? Duan Ling Tian was curious in his heart. According to his knowledge, even the lowest level of the wind force, elementary wind force, was comparable to the strength of 200 ancient mammoths when utilized. Right when Duan Ling Tian was feeling curious, the 100-plus ancient mammoth silhouettes above him suddenly reduced to become 80-plus ancient mammoths. Then it violently increased to 100-plus again. What's going on? The scene before him caused Duan Ling Tian to be slightly dumbstruck as he completely had no idea what was going on. I seem to have not comprehended wind force, but the wind force also seemed to already possess traces of being completely formed. Duan Ling Tian's thoughts revolved abruptly. Normally speaking, it's impossible for a nascent soul stage martial artist to comprehend force. Could it be that I'm being restrained by this? Before long, Duan Ling Tian was suddenly enlightened. However, according to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, the high-grade Earth rank martial skill, Whirlwind, is sufficient to assist me in comprehending wind force. Perhaps, as he thought up to this point, Duan Ling Tian pushed off the tilted tree and descended onto the peak of Migres Peak with a leap. Presently, the peak of Migres Peak was completely devoid of people. Whirlwind. Duan Ling Tian's figure moved, as if he'd transformed into wind, and he started to cultivate his new movement technique. Although it's said to be his new movement technique, but it actually still contains some traces of the spirit serpent movement technique. Whirlwind. Step into the initial stage, and one may comprehend elementary wind force. Step into the mastery stage, and one may comprehend half-step advanced wind force. Step into the perfection stage, and one may comprehend advanced wind force. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian had a certain level of comprehension towards this high-grade earth rank movement technique. Duan Ling Tian's figure flashed out, as if he'd transformed into a gale, sweeping through the mist and clouds that covered the sky and coiled around the peak of Migres Peak. His speed grew swifter and swifter. Let me test if I can merge that incomplete wind force I comprehended into whirlwind. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. Then the origin energy on his body fluctuated before it contained extra traces of a strange aura. This aura was precisely the incomplete wind force that Duan Ling Tian had obtained sudden insight of after 10 days. Instantly, swoosh, 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 swoosh. Compared to before, Duan Ling Tian's speed was nearly doubled. Not only that, along with Duan Ling Tian becoming skilled in the incomplete wind force he'd comprehended, he was also able to gradually merge it with his movement technique, whirlwind. For an entire day and night, Duan Ling Tian didn't stop in the slightest. If a void-prying stage martial artist was present, then they would surely be able to notice that the originally incomplete wind force on Duan Ling Tian's body was gradually becoming completely merged with whirlwind as Duan Ling Tian utilized them together. Whoosh! Until the second day when twilight appeared in the horizon, when Duan Ling Tian's figure flashed, the strange aura that was unstable and finally stabilized. Whoosh! At the same time, 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air above Duan Ling Tian, who didn't use any origin energy to move his body. This was precisely the strength of elementary wind force. Elementary wind force. I've succeeded. When he noticed this, Duan Ling Tian stopped moved and had a jubilantly happy expression. Growl, growl. Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian heard a wave of light noises, and he noticed that his stomach was growling. Only now did he realize that he seemed to have not eaten for a long time. How many days have passed? Duan Ling Tian, who had a dazed expression, started a fire on the peak of Migres Peak before starting to roast meat and wolf it down. At the same time that he bit on the roasted meat, Duan Ling Tian didn't forget to recall his gains. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, there are some people within Cloud Continent with outstanding comprehension ability that are able to comprehend incomplete force when they were at the nascent soul stage. That time of people were practically able to instantly comprehend elementary force when they stepped into the void prying stage. Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. As for my circumstances, according to the knowledge of Rebirth Martial Emperor, it ought to be a type of sudden insight. Sudden insight could be encountered by luck, but not sought after. Amongst the countless martial artists in the world, they might not have even encountered sudden insight once in their entire lifetime. Some people were able to cause everyone around them to ascend in life once they themselves obtained sudden insight. Although few, there were still people on Cloud Continent who directly comprehended force from a sudden insight, like Duan Tian. Even to the extent, there were still some people who just comprehended half-step advanced force. Then, because of sudden insight, they directly comprehended advanced force. Compared to the latter, Duan Tian could be considered to be inferior. Sudden insight. I truly never imagined that I would have such luck. Duan Tian shook his head and sighed. Through the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Tian was able to perceive how difficult sudden insight was to come by. Even the Rebirth Martial Emperor, who'd experienced 2 lifetimes, hadn't encountered more than 10 people who'd experienced sudden insight. A person who'd experienced sudden insight twice was almost non-existent. Sudden insight is related to a person's great fortuitous encounter. Presently, I've comprehended elementary wind force through sudden insight. In the future, if I want to immerse myself in the state of sudden insight again, it would be practically impossible. Flowing lights flashed within Duan Tian's eyes as he said to himself, "Elementary wind force." In next to no time, Duan Tian came back to his senses. Whoosh! Origin energy skyrocketed on his legs, and he didn't hold back in the slightest. Elementary wind force merged into his origin energy. Bang! Above Duan Tian, hundreds of ancient mammoth silhouettes had imposing manners that shot into the sky like rainbows as they followed Duan Tian to flash out. Whirlwind. Instantly, Duan Tian's entire body seemed to have transformed into a gale, sweeping away all the clouds and mist surrounding the peak of Migres Peak. For a moment, all the clouds and mist atop the peak of Migres Peak had dispersed, vanishing without a trace. Satisfying. At the same time that he dashed, Duan Tian had the feeling as if he was racing with the wind, causing his mood to feel at ease. Presently, this high-grade Earth rank movement technique, Whirlwind, can be considered to have officially stepped into the initial stage. As expected of a high-grade Earth rank movement technique, it's far from something those high-grade profound rank movement techniques can compare to. Duan Tian thought in his heart. Even Duan Tian himself never imagined that standing on the tilted tree and sensing the piercingly cold winter wind that day would allow him to inexplicably enter the state of sudden insight. With a single sudden insight, he'd comprehended elementary wind force. S***T. Suddenly, Duan Tian seemed to have thought of something. His pupils constricted and his face went grim. Whirlwind. Duan Tian's figure fluttered, seeming to transform into a gale as he directly flashed down Migres Peak with burning anxiety. I wonder how long the sudden insight this time spent. If I've missed the date ahead to the martial competition, then I would truly be unworthy of the care the sect leader has given me. After Duan Tian left Migres Peak, he directly stepped on the chain bridge and headed to Dubhe Peak. He didn't dare stop for a single moment. That day before he went into closed-door cultivation, the materials Duan Tian asked the sect leader, Linghu Jin Hong, to gather was practically all the materials he didn't possess. Those materials were all extremely difficult to come by, materials that had a price but lacked any stock on the market. This favor was something Duan Tian remembered in his heart. If he was unable to be in time for the martial competition this time, then he would undoubtedly lose a chance to return this favor. He didn't want to lose this chance. Duan Tian's figure flashed, causing the wind and clouds to flutter all along the way, and he directly headed to Dubhe Hall on Dubhe Peak. When Duan Tian arrived at Dubhe Hall and saw the sect leader's personal disciple, Huang Ji, Duan Tian heaved a sigh of relief, as it looked like he didn't miss it. Duan Tian, Master has been looking for you for many days. There's actually no one on Migres Peak that knows where your cultivation location is. Are you really cultivating on Migres Peak? Huang Ji still had a calm expression when he saw Duan Tian, but his brows lightly frowned. The sect leader is looking for me? Duan Ling Tian was stunned, then walked into Dubby Hall under the lead of Huang Ji. In next to no time, the sect leader, Linghu Jin Hong, appeared. Duan Ling Tian. The calm expression on Linghu Jin Hong's face revealed a wisp of a smile when he saw Duan Ling Tian. This scene caused Huang Ji, who stood nearby, to have a slightly unnatural expression. He was the personal disciple of Linghu Jin Hong, but normally, before this master of his, he'd never seen his master have such a smile towards him. Slight envy had arisen within his heart. Sect leader. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled and nodded to Linghu Jin Hong. I've been cultivating during these past few days and didn't pay attention to the time. When are we leaving? In 3 days. As Linghu Jin Hong spoke, he raised his hand. Swoosh. A spirit fruit that flickered with a jade green sheen appeared out of thin air on his hand. The spirit fruit was completely crimson red, yet its entire body flickered with a jade green sheen. With a single glance, one could discern that this spirit fruit was no ordinary thing. Huang Ji's gaze abruptly lit up. A spirit fruit was a treasure that could be encountered by luck, but not sought after. When Duan Ling Tian saw the spirit fruit in Linghu Jin Hong's hand, he'd recognized it in the first possible moment, and he couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. Jade Origin Fruit. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, the Jade Origin Fruit was a type of spirit fruit that was of higher grade than the profound origin fruit he'd consumed that day. When consumed by a martial artist below the 4th level of the nascent soul stage, it was sufficient to allow the martial artist to directly break through to the next level. When consumed by a 4th, 5th, or 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist, it was only able to allow the cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. If one had fallen into a bottleneck, then it was even sufficient to directly break through the bottleneck and break through to the next level. If it was consumed by a martial artist at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage or above, its effect would instead be reduced greatly. Duan Ling Tian's breathing became hurried. If he was able to obtain this jade origin fruit, then once he consumed it, he was confident in making his cultivation break through to the next level. Jade origin fruit. At the beginning, although Huang Ji had realized that the spirit fruit in Linghu Jin Hong's hands wasn't simple, but he was unable to recognize it. Now, when he heard what Duan Ling Tian said, his gaze became burning with desire. His cultivation had broken through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage 3 months ago. If he was able to obtain this jade origin fruit, then even if he was unable to break through to the 6th level of the nascent soul stage, it would still be sufficient to allow his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds, and it would be of extremely great assistance to his cultivation in the future. For a time, the gaze Huang Ji shot at the jade origin fruit was filled with desire. I never expected you would recognize the jade origin fruit. Linghu Jin Hong glanced at Duan Ling Tian in surprise. This young man is really more and more mysterious. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled, his gaze never leaving the jade origin fruit in Linghu Jin Hong's hands. In the past, I'd once seen it in an ancient book, and there was a picture especially there to explain in detail. Linghu Jin Hong came to a sudden understanding. If it was like this, then it wasn't strange. Duan Ling Tian. Linghu Jin Hong glanced at Duan Ling Tian, and his gaze followed to descend onto the jade origin fruit in his hand. This scene caused Huang Ji's face to go grim. Could it be that Master wants to bestow this jade origin fruit to Duan Ling Tian? No, this absolutely will not do. Huang Ji's heart burned with anxiety, and his belly was filled with unwillingness. But before his master, Linghu Jin Hong, he didn't dare be presumptuous in the slightest. Have you broken through to the nascent soul stage? Linghu Jin Hong slowly asked Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled and nodded. Huh, good. Linghu Jin Hong laughed heartily. You didn't let me down after all. If I'm not wrong, you're only 22 this year, right? Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded with a carefree expression. He didn't think this achievement was great. That day, the mysterious yellow-clothed young girl, Han Xuanai, was around the age of 15 or 16, but her cultivation was already at the void-prying stage. Compared to Han Xuanai, he was nothing. Boo! Within the domain of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, The appearance of a nascent soul stage martial artist that was at the age of 22 was indeed sufficient to cause people to be extremely shocked. He's broken through to the nascent soul stage? Huang Ji looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression of disbelief, and his eyes contained slight coldness. He knew clearly in his heart, now that Duan Ling Tian had broken through to the nascent soul stage at such an age, with the disposition of his master, who'd always loved geniuses extremely, his master would surely bestow the jade origin fruit to Duan Ling Tian. At this moment, his eyes seemed to be enveloped in a layer of ice. Duan Ling Tian. As expected, Linghu Jin Hong passed the spirit fruit in his hands to Duan Ling Tian. Consume this jade origin fruit, and your cultivation ought to be sufficient to break through to the peak of the second level of the nascent soul stage. I'm confident that in another 3 years, when it's time for the next martial competition, you'll surely be able to win the highest honor for our 7-star sword sect. Sect leader, you want to gift the jade origin fruit to me? Duan Ling Tian was stunned. Although he recognized that the spirit fruit in Linghu Jin Hong's hand was a jade origin fruit, he never thought that Linghu Jin Hong would gift it to him. After all, Linghu Jin Hong himself had a nascent soul stage personal disciple. For a moment, he couldn't refrain from glancing at Huang Ji. Yet he noticed that Huang Ji, who'd always been incomparably cold and indifferent towards him, now looked at him with a gaze that contained a slight sheen of hatred out of jealousy. Duan Ling Tian was able to guess the reason. I'm naturally gifting it to you. Linghu Jin Hong nodded, and had an expression that said it was a matter of course. This jade origin fruit is something I obtained unexpectedly while going deep into the primeval forest half a month ago. I planned to find you and gift it to you a few days ago, but I was unable to find you. Huang Ji's face sank. He never expected that his master anxiously looking for Duan Ling Tian these past few days was actually for the sake of bestowing this jade origin fruit to Duan Ling Tian. After all, before today, even he didn't know of the existence of the jade origin fruit. For a moment, flames of jealousy blazed in Huang Ji's heart. Duan Ling Tian's brows raised when he heard Linghu Jin Hong. His place of cultivation, the stalactite cave, was a place that only he and the 2 little girls knew of. Without his permission, the 2 little girls would absolutely not reveal the secret of the stalactite cave to another person, including their masters. Thank you, sect leader. Duan Ling Tian didn't refuse and extended his hand to receive the jade origin fruit. This jade origin fruit had extraordinary meaning to him currently, as it was sufficient to allow his cultivation to directly break through to the next level. At the same time that he received the jade origin fruit, Duan Ling Tian could feel traces of heaviness. He knew clearly in his heart that at the same time that he received this jade origin fruit, it would also mean that he shouldered a responsibility. I'll let the sect leader know during the martial competition this time. Gifting this jade origin fruit to me was absolutely not a wrong choice. Duan Ling Tian said in his heart. Linghu Jin Hong swept out his hand, causing his sleeve to give rise to wind, as he slowly said, Go. After you consume the jade origin fruit and break through to the second level of the nascent soul stage, don't continue cultivating so as to avoid you missing the time to participate in the martial competition of the 5 great sects this time. Second level nascent soul stage? Duan Ling Tian neither agreed nor disagreed when he heard Linghu Jin Hong. Does this sect leader really think that I'm only at the first level of the nascent soul stage? Yes. However, Duan Ling Tian didn't explain any further. He replied before turning around and leaving. When he left, Duan Ling Tian was able to sense the burning gaze of hate and jealousy that flashed at him from behind. He didn't have to turn around, and he could already guess it. The owner of the gaze was precisely Huang Ji. After leaving Dubhe Hall, Duan Ling Tian left Dubhe Peak and returned to Migres Peak. Jade origin fruit. With this jade origin fruit, my cultivation will step into a new horizon. Duan Ling Tian's face revealed a brilliant smile. Sect leader, it won't be long before I let you know how correct your decision today to gift the jade origin fruit was. Duan Ling Tian silently said in his heart. The sect leader, Linghu Jin Hong, bestowed this jade origin fruit to him and not to his own personal disciple, Huang Ji. He'd obviously deliberated about it for a long time. Of course, Duan Ling Tian also knew that the reason Linghu Jin Hong didn't give the jade origin fruit to Huang Ji wasn't because he wasn't good to Huang Ji. On the contrary, Huang Ji was his personal disciple, and in terms of affection, no one could compare to the status Huang Ji had in his heart. Today, Linghu Jin Hong had made such a decision undoubtedly because he abandoned his own personal feelings and did it all for the sake of the Seven-Star Sword sect. After all, besides being a master, he was also a leader of a sect. Every decision of his could affect the entire sect. After he returned to the stalactite cave, Duan Ling Tian sat on the stone platform before withdrawing the jade origin fruit and gobbling it up with a few bites. The jade origin fruit's juice was icy cold when it entered the mouth. Then it fused into Duan Ling Tian's body and spread out. Duan Ling Tian closed his eyes. 9 dragons wore sovereign technique, wind WIRM form. He started cultivating and dissolving the medicinal strength of the jade origin fruit. Needless to say, the medicinal strength of the jade origin fruit was extremely domineering. Duan Ling Tian had only spent an entire day and night, and he'd already broken through. There were still another 2 days before they departed. Duan Ling Tian spent the remaining time to the 2 little girls. Just like this, 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. W Peak, W Hall. 7 figures were gathered together. 3 middle-aged men with extraordinary bearing and 4 7-star sword sect inner court disciples. You're Duan Ling Tian? A middle-aged man in sky-blue robes shot his gaze that was brimming with vigor at Duan Ling Tian, and at the same time, a terrifying, imposing manner enveloped out to press itself onto Duan Ling Tian. However, Duan Ling Tian instead remained unmoved. He stood there, not moving like a mountain, as if he would remain unfazed even if MT Tai were to collapse. As expected of the #1 genius in the history of our 7-star sword sect, you're worth of your reputation. In next to no time, the blue-robed middle-aged man withdrew his imposing manner and praised. Duan Ling Tian, this is the Peak Master of Fekta Peak, Kuzhun. The Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan, who stood nearby, lightly smiled as he introduced to Duan Ling Tian. Peak Master Kuzhun. Duan Ling Tian greeted the blue-robed middle-aged man. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime worth of memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Ling Tian could vaguely perceive that this Peak Master of Fekta Peak seemed to be an expert that had stepped into the second stage of the Void stage, the Void initiation stage. The Void stage was divided into 4 stages. The first Void stage, the Void prying stage. The second Void stage, the Void initiation stage. The third Void stage, the Void interpretation stage. The fourth Void stage, the Void transformation stage. Sect leader, you don't intend to take Duan Ling Tian as your personal disciple? Kuzhen nodded with a smile to Duan Ling Tian, then looked at the nearby Linghu Jin Hong. If sect leader has no intention of taking Duan Ling Tian as a personal disciple, then I won't be courteous. Kuzhen's words displayed his thoughts of wanting to take Duan Ling Tian as his personal disciple. Duan Ling Tian smiled bitterly. When did I become such a hot cake? Linghu Jin Hong hadn't even spoken when Zheng Fan had already started laughing. Kuzhen, I and sect leader both think we have no qualification to be Duan Ling Tian's master. Could it be that you think you have sufficient qualification? If Duan Ling Tian takes you as his master, what do you have to teach him? Kuzhen's face froze when he heard this. Exactly. If Duan Ling Tian were to take me as a master, what do I have to teach Duan Ling Tian? Force and concept relied more on individual comprehension, and others weren't able to affect it. As for sword skills and other various combat methods, as an existence who could kill a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple while only at the 9th level of the origin core stage, would Duan Ling Tian need me to teach him? When he thought up to here, Kuzhen shook his head and laughed in self-ridicule. I really forgot this. Indeed, not to mention our 7-star sword sect. Even throughout the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Darkstone Empire, and the Darkhan Dynasty, there might not be a person who possessed the qualifications to be Duan Ling Tian's master. A master delivered teachings and cleared confusion. If he wasn't even able to do this, then how would he be a master? At this moment, Kuzhun could perceive that the reason the sect leader didn't take Duanling Tian as a personal disciple wasn't because he didn't intend to, but because he felt he didn't have the qualifications. Humph. The nearby Huang Ji coldly swept Duanling Tian with his gaze and snorted secretly. Kuzhun saying this was undoubtedly indirectly saying that he, Huang Ji, the personal disciple of the Seven-Star Sword sect leader, was inferior to Duanling Tian. After all, Duanling Tian was someone that even his master, the sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect, didn't have the qualifications to take as a disciple. Get ready to depart. Suddenly, Linghu Jinhong spoke indifferently. Depart? Duanling Tian was stunned. It was at this moment that the sound of wind and a bird sounded out in the distant horizon. Swoosh! An enormous black shadow descended from behind the distant clouds and mist, and it passed through to appear before the eyes of Duanling Tian and the others. This is... Duanling Tian's pupils constricted as he gazed at the enormous flying demon beast before him. This flying demon beast was a grand roc. Its entire body was dark gray, and when it opened its wings, it was like clouds that covered the sky. It didn't possess the sharp feathers like the dark roc that Zither young master rode, and its feathers were no different from the feathers of an ordinary fierce beast, seeming to be extremely ordinary. However, its sharp claws that flickered with cold light were sufficient to cause one to be terrified. It was like a sharp weapon that could destroy anything. Most importantly, at the instant this grand roc appeared, Duanling Tian sensed that its aura was extraordinary, to the extent that it was not inferior to Zheng Fan and Kuzhun. Duanling Tian took a deep breath and couldn't help but extend his spiritual force out, desiring to inspect the strength of this grand roc. However, when Duanling Tian's spiritual force touched the grand roc, a strand of cold light suddenly flashed past the originally dim eyes of the grand roc, and the gaze covered in an icy cold sheen that shot at Duanling Tian caused him to shudder and hurriedly withdraw his spiritual force. Little fellow, you're not bad. You actually possess such a strong spiritual force at such an age. Right at this moment, an aged voice sounded out in Duanling Tian's ears. Who? Duanling Tian was stunned. He was able to discern that this voice transmission wasn't sent by any of the people present. Right when Duanling Tian was looking around. What a naive little fellow. The voice transmission sounded out once again. This time, Duanling Tian reacted, and he was completely dumbstruck as he gazed at the grand roc that was flying downward swiftly. It was this grand roc that was speaking to me? Demon beast condensing origin energy into sound? According to the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian knew very well that condensing origin energy into sound was something a 7th-level origin core stage human martial artist was able to utilize. But if it was a demon beast, it instead had to step into the void initiation stage to be able to condense origin energy into sound. This is a void initiation stage demon beast. After he recovered from his shock, Duanling Tian felt a chill run down his spine. The intuition of a demon beast was innately more acute than humans. Duanling Tian's spiritual force was something even Linghu Jinhong was unable to notice, where this void initiation stage demon beast was able to notice it at the first possible moment. Whoosh! The grand roc's enormous figure descended swiftly outside Dubby Hall with a bang, giving rise to dust and dirt that covered the sky. Elder Pong. Right at this moment, Duanling Tian saw that everyone present, including Linghu Jinhong, respectfully bowed to the grand roc. Whereas the grand roc nodded like a human, then its eyes descended onto Duanling Tian before looked at Linghu Jinhong, seeming to be asking something. Elder Pong, he's Duanling Tian and is the disciple with the strongest natural talent in the history of our 7-Star Sword sect. Presently, he's only 22 years old, but his cultivation has already stepped into the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Linghu Jinhong respectfully introduced Duanling Tian to the grand roc. When the grand roc heard this, its sharp eyes contained a sense of surprise. Obviously, he was shocked by Duanling Tian's natural talent in the martial Dao as well. 2nd level of the nascent soul stage? Not only did what Linghu Jinhong say shock the grand roc, even the Zheng Fan and Kuzhun were moved now. Although they knew that Duan Ling Tian had already stepped into the 9th level of the Origin Core stage 1 year ago, if Duan Ling Tian was only at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage now, they wouldn't be surprised. After all, Duan Ling Tian's natural talent was there for all to see. However, Duan Ling Tian had actually broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Junior brother Duan Ling Tian, you've broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. Zheng Song looked at Duan Ling Tian with a surprised expression. Amongst the young disciples of the 7-Star Sword sect, only he was acquainted with Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian laughed lightly, but didn't affirm it nor deny it. However, Duan Ling Tian's current attitude instead caused Zheng Song to be deeply convinced. The other two people were respectively the personal disciple of sect leader Linghu Jin Hong, Huang Ji, and the personal disciple of Peak Master Kejun, Meng Qiu. Meng Qiu was a young man with an ordinary appearance, and his age was slightly younger than Zheng Song. Presently, the gaze he shot at Duan Ling Tian was filled with shock. 22-year-old 2nd-level nascent soul, stage martial artist? Unbelievable. If it wasn't for the jade origin fruit that Master bestowed to him, would he be able to break through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage? Huang Ji's voice sounded out abruptly, and traces of jealousy was mixed within. For a time, everyone present came to a sudden understanding. So it turns out that Duan Ling Tian consumed a jade origin fruit. Sect leader, what extravagance! You actually bestowed a spirit fruit like the jade origin fruit to Duan Ling Tian. Kujin couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He could feel the great hopes that Linghu Jin Hong had entrusted to Duan Ling Tian. Jade origin fruit. Zheng Fan and Zheng Song both revealed expressions of shock. Meng Qiu looked at Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes contained traces of envy. If he was able to obtain a jade origin fruit, he was confident of directly stepping into the 5th level of the nascent soul stage once he consumed it. Before Duan Ling Tian had appeared, Meng Qiu's natural talent was able to be ranked at the 2nd amongst the younger generation 7-Star Sword sect disciples that were below 30. Only below Huang Ji and surpassing Zheng Song. But unfortunately, the appearance of Duan Ling Tian had completely thrown this ranking into disorder. The three of them were all smashed by Duan Ling Tian's outstanding natural talent, and could only place themselves behind Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian was the presently publicly acknowledged number 1 in the 7-Star Sword sect. Even to the extent that within the long flow of history in the 7-Star Sword sect since it was established, a monster like Duan Ling Tian had never appeared, and Duan Ling Tian's natural talent could be considered to be unprecedented. Huang Ji's sudden interruption caused Linghu Jin Hong to be slightly displeased, and he grunted coldly. Even if Duan Ling Tian didn't consume the jade origin fruit, even if Duan Ling Tian was only at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage, do you think you can compare to him? What cultivation did you possess when you were at the same age as Duan Ling Tian? Linghu Jin Hong's words contained a sense of disappointment that Huang Ji didn't live up to his expectations. Huang Ji lowered his head when taught a lesson by Linghu Jin Hong, as he had no means to refute him. 2nd level of the nascent soul stage? Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled. The sect leader and everyone else all seemed to think that he only broke through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage after consuming the jade origin fruit. Duan Ling Tian. Meanwhile, Linghu Jin Hong looked at Duan Ling Tian and introduced the Grand Roc, who'd withdrawn his wings that were like clouds that covered the sky and stood there like a small hill. This is Elder Peng. He's also our 7-Star Sword sect guardian, revered elder. Elder Peng is the senior with the highest seniority in our 7-Star Sword sect. Highest seniority. It undoubtedly displayed that the time this Grand Roc existed was even longer than the 2 great guardian elders of the 7-Star Sword sect. Sect guardian, revered elder. Just these 4 words were enough to display how formidable the Grand Roc was. Elder Peng. Duan Ling Tian looked at the Grand Peng, then greeted him. The Grand Roc nodded to Duan Ling Tian. Then he unfolded his wings before lightly sweeping them. Swoosh. Instantly, the air outside Dubhe Hall seemed as if it was completely drawn out, and dust and dirt suffused and flew into the sky. Depart. Linghu Jin Hong called out to Duan Ling Tian, and the others before being the first to leap up the spacious back of the grand rock that was like flat ground. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian and the others ascended the back of the grand rock one by one. After he descended onto the back of the grand rock, Duan Ling Tian was able to guess what would happen next. This grand rock, who is also the sect guardian revered Elder Pong, of the Seven-Star Sword sect, would carry their group to head to the demonic Lotus Blade sect. This martial competition of the 5 great sects this time would be carried out in the demonic Lotus Blade sect. The demonic Lotus Blade sect was similar to the Seven-Star Sword sect, as they were both one of the 5 great top sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If it was said that over 90% of the Seven-Star Sword sect disciples used swords, then 90% of the disciples of the demonic Lotus Blade sect instead used sabers. Right at this moment, the Grand Rock fully opened up his wings that were like clouds that could cover up the sky. Swoosh, swoosh. The Grand Rock swung his wings, and his speed abruptly rose, as if he'd transformed into a bolt of lightning, and he flew through the clouds and mist as he flashed out. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sounds of piercingly cold, strong winds entered into Duan Ling Tian's ears as swift and fierce, violent winds assaulted his face, slapping his face. However, Duan Ling Tian remained unmoved. He stood there, not moving, like a mountain. Along with the Grand Rock increasing his speed, Zheng Song was the first to be unable to endure the violent winds that assaulted him. His face went pale, and his figure started to tremble slightly. Then it was Meng Qiu. Humph. Huang Ji, who was gritting his teeth and persevering, glanced at Duan Ling Tian, who had a carefree expression, and he clenched his teeth. Now, he was almost at the verge of collapse. But when he saw Duan Ling Tian, seemed as if nothing was happening when faced with the piercingly cold, violent winds that assaulted him. He wasn't willing to admit defeat. Duan Ling Tian noticed Huang Ji's actions, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile of disdain. If it was before, he might be afraid of this piercingly cold, violent winds. But now, he who'd comprehended elementary wind force completely didn't take violent winds of such strength seriously. Linghu Jinhong noticed the unsightly expressions of Zheng Song, Meng Qiu, and Huang Ji, but when he saw Duan Ling Tian's carefree expression, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and he secretly exclaimed "freak" before saying to the Grand Rock, "Elder Pong, please take care of the juniors." 3 useless little things. Right at this moment, a voice transmission entered into the ears of everyone present, and it caused Linghu Jinhong, Zheng Fan, and Ku Zhun to smile helplessly. They were naturally able to perceive that Elder Pong was testing the juniors earlier. Now, compared to Duan Ling Tian's performance, the performance of Huang Ji, Zheng Song, and Meng Qiu were simply not worth mentioning. It was no wonder that Elder Pong would be so blunt. Swoosh. The Grand Rock gradually slowed down his speed, causing Huang Ji and the others to heave a sigh of relief. After they recovered, Zheng Song had a bitter smile as he muttered, "How can we compare to junior brother Duan Ling Tian? He's a freak." Unlike Zheng Song's open-mindedness, Huang Ji and Meng Qiu had extremely unsightly expressions. The fact that they were trampled on by a kid that was 22 years old was difficult for them to accept. Duan Ling Tian was able to sense their fierce gazes, but he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them, and he instead sized up the surroundings with interest. Unfortunately, only a boundless expanse entered his eyes, yet he could see nothing. "Senior brother Zheng Song, we still need to spend half a month of time to arrive the demonic Lotus Blade sect, even with Elder Peng taking us there?" Duan Ling Tian walked up to Zheng Song's side and asked curiously. "Yes." Zheng Song nodded. "This is something we can't do anything about. If Elder Peng was heading towards the demonic Lotus Blade sect by himself, he would arrive there within half a day. But now, Elder Peng has to take care of us juniors, so he can only reduce his speed to a level that we can endure." Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. Elder Peng's speed was extremely swift, but it was difficult for Zheng Song, Meng Qiu, and Huang Ji to withstand the swift and fierce violent winds that assaulted their faces during extremely swift flight. Even if it was Duan Ling Tian, although it wasn't strenuous earlier, but once Elder Peng doubled his speed, he would surely find it difficult to endure. Half a month. Only when Duan Ling Tian found out of the location of the demonic Lotus Blade sect did he realize that even with Elder Peng slowing down, their traveling speed could still be considered to be extremely swift. The distance between the Seven-Star Sword sect and the demonic Lotus Blade sect was actually 3 times the distance from the Seven-Star Sword sect to Solitary Summit. After all, when he departed from the Seven-Star Sword sect that day, even when he used his Fergana horse to hurry on the journey at full speed all the way, he'd still used 4 to 5 months of time to arrive at the ancient city of Everlast that was near the Solitary Summit. However, the speed of a Fergana horse is completely unable to compare to the speed of Elder Peng. Duan Ling Tian was extremely clear of this. Even if Elder Peng was intentionally slowing down now, in terms of speed, he still far surpassed a Fergana horse by over 10 times or even 100 times. All along the way, Duan Ling Tian and Zheng Song chatted idly about anything and everything. Unknowingly, they'd chatted to the topic of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. In the current younger generation of the demonic Lotus Blade sect, an extremely outstanding inner court disciple has appeared, and he's ranked number 5 amongst the 5 great young masters. People call him Saber Young Master. As he finished speaking, Zheng Song was filled with respect. Saber Young Master? Duan Ling Tian's brows raised. How is this Saber Young Master compared to Zither Young Master? In terms of strength, he's slightly inferior. In terms of natural talent, they're on par. Zheng Song continued. The Saber Young Master is the youngest amongst the 5 great young masters, and is only 26 this year. However, according to my father, the cultivation of that Saber Young Master has already stepped into the 6th level of the nascent soul stage last year. Presently, it's very likely that he has stepped into the 7th level of the nascent soul stage. 26-year-old 7th level nascent soul stage martial artist? Duan Ling Tian nodded. Such natural talent was indeed not inferior to the Zither Young Master, Zishang. Half a month of time passed by quickly. Then one day, Duan Ling Tian, who stood atop the Grand Rock's back, felt his feet tremble, and the Grand Rock had suddenly slowed down and plunged downwards. The clouds and mist in Duan Ling Tian's field of vision dispersed completely, and a boundlessly vast gorge appeared before the eyes of Duan Ling Tian and the others. Presently, Duan Ling Tian stood atop the back of the Grand Rock and looked down upon this gorge, and he could see that the shape of the gorge was like an incomparably demonic lotus. Within this lotus-shaped gorge, every petal was an independent gorge within the gorge. This is the location of the demonic Lotus Blade sect, the demonic Lotus Gorge. Linghu Jinhong looked down at the vast gorge and said slowly, "This demonic Lotus Gorge looks like a 9-petaled demonic lotus. The location of those 9 petals are where the outer court disciples of the demonic Lotus Blade sect cultivate and are similar to the 6 great outer court sword peaks of our 7-star sword sect." Under Linghu Jinhong's introduction, Duan Ling Tian and the others acquired a certain level of understanding of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. "Elder Peng, let's go down," Linghu Jinhong said to the Grand Rock. The Grand Rock nodded, then descended to the central area of the demonic Lotus Forge. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian frowned. His acute spiritual force vaguely determined that a person had suddenly appeared ahead of them, and it was in existence at the 6th level of the void prying stage. Not long after, the Grand Rock's body jerked before descending near that person. Duan Ling Tian glanced over. Nearby, an azure-clothed old man stood in midair and cupped his fist and bowed as he greeted Linghu Jinhong, who was atop the Grand Rock's back. Sect leader Linghu. Humph. Linghu Jinhong hadn't even spoken when the face of Kajun, who stood nearby, sank. The terrifying, imposing manner on his body extended out to envelop the old man. "Our 7-star sword sect leader has arrived personally, but not even a single one of your demonic Lotus Blade sect's leader or 9 gorge masters have come out to greet us." The old man's face went slightly pale when enveloped by Kajun's aura, and he hurriedly explained. "Peak Master Kajun, amongst our sect leader and the 9 gorge masters, there are quite a few who are in closed-door cultivation. Besides the sect leader, only 3 gorge masters aren't in closed-door cultivation, and they're now entertaining the honored guests of the other 3 sections. 1 sect leader, 3 gorge masters. What a great demonic Lotus Blade sect. Zheng Fan took a step forward and a similarly terrifying aura enveloped the old man, causing the already pale face of the old man to go ghastly pale. Peak Master Zheng Fan, you've actually broken through. He knew the 7-star sword sect's sect leader and the 6 peak masters. According to his knowledge, the 7-star sword sect's Mizar Peaks master, Zheng Fan, ought to only be a martial artist at the 9th level of the void prying stage, but he never imagined that Zheng Fan would have actually broken through. Zheng Fan breaking through also meant that the 7-star sword sect had another void initiation stage expert. This wasn't good news to the demonic Lotus Blade sect. Zheng Fan, you've broken through? Ku Zhen was stunned. Zheng Fan lightly smiled, and his gaze unnoticeably flashed towards Duan Ling Tian. His breaking through was all thanks to Duan Ling Tian. Peak Master Zheng Fan really concealed himself well. Even the Peak Master of Fekta Peak didn't know he'd already broken through. Duan Ling Tian was similarly surprised when he saw this. After all, Zheng Fan had broken through to the void initiation stage 2 years ago. Lead the way. Linghu Jinhong finally spoke, seeming to pay no attention to the demonic Lotus Blade sect's loss of respect. But Duan Ling Tian was still able to notice the terrifying rage contained deep within Linghu Jinhong's eyes. The 7-star sword sect was the leader of the 5 great top sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom at any rate. But now the 7-star sword sect was actually looked down upon by the demonic Lotus Blade sect like this. As the sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, how could Linghu Jinhong not be enraged? Looks like the 7-star sword sect's younger generation's lack of strength has affected the prestige of the 7-star sword sect to a certain extent. Although Duan Ling Tian only watched on coldly from the sidelines, he was still able to notice a slight inkling. Just think about it. A sect presently relied on its experts of the senior generation. But in the future, when the senior generation experts retired or even died of old age, it would still need to rely on the gradually maturing younger generation. It could be imagined that if a sect's new blood didn't have good quality, then it would surely decline in the future.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.